When the police arrived, they didn't knock. They announced me to the whole street. Mrs. Benson. "Open the door! We have a warrant." It was barely 7:30 a.m. The mailman froze on the sidewalk. Mrs. Lang from next door peeked through her curtain, her nose pressed against the glass, like it had been waiting for this moment all her life. By the time I reached the door, 2 officers were already stepping onto my porch, boots thudding against the old wood my husband laid down 40 years ago. "Clara Benson?" one of them asked. I nodded. He tilted his tablet toward me, and my entire life cracked open in one frame. There I was, or rather, a perfect version of me, standing inside Crescent Bank, smiling faintly at the cashier while stacking $100 bills into my purse. The timestamp read Friday, 4:42 a.m. That was the same hour I was at home in my pajamas, drinking lemon tea and arguing with my insurance company about a dental claim. My stomach sank, but my mind didn't panic. I studied the video, the way only a retired teacher who'd graded thousands of essays could, noticing the details others missed. The woman's smile was mine, but her reflection in the counter wasn't. The ring on her right hand glimmered too sharply, like light without a source. Still, the officer's tone left no room for sense. "Ma'am, this is security footage. The bank confirms your ID was used, and withdrawals totaled $37,000. He spoke like it was already a confession. I laughed, the kind of broken, nervous laugh that sounds like you've lost your place in the world. "That's impossible," I said. "I don't even know my online password." "My son handles all that," he frowned, lowering the tablet. "Ma'am, your son's the one who filed the report." By 10 o'clock, news vans lined the street. The reporter from Channel 5 called it the Grandma Heist. They played that cursed footage every 30 minutes, sandwiched between car commercials and weather updates. The comments online were merciless. Old people think rules don't apply to them. Bet she's been stealing for years. She looks so calm doing it. Pure guilt. Every lie found an audience. When my daughter-in-law, Emily, arrived, she wore black sunglasses and carried tissues. Not for me, but for the cameras. She dabbed her eyes dramatically and whispered loud enough for the microphones to catch. "She's been so forgetful lately." I told Tom we might need to look into early dementia testing. The word dementia hung in the air like poison. I felt the reporter's shift. Smell blood, type faster. Thomas, my only son, stood a few steps behind her. He didn't look at me. He just rubbed his temples like a man who couldn't decide whether to believe his mother or his wife. "Mom," he muttered, "they found your fingerprints on the withdrawal slips." "Because Emily handles my banking," I said sharply. "You both told me to sign those blank forms so you could automate my bills." Emily smiled faintly, that slow, deliberate smile that says checkmate. "Oh, Clara," she sighed, "you really should stop saying things like that in front of people. It's embarrassing." That was the moment my neighborhood decided my guilt. By afternoon, my account was frozen, my phone seized, and my reputation annihilated. The HOA president, the same woman who once begged me to bake lemon squares for her charity auction, sent a message asking me not to attend the upcoming neighborhood brunch because it might cause discomfort, as if betrayal had an RSVP, but humiliation wasn't done with me yet. That evening, the footage leaked again, this time with audio. It showed me whispering to the cashier, "Keep it quiet. He doesn't know about this account." Except I never said those words. My voice was different, too flat, too even, like someone typing emotions into a machine. The cadence was off by a hair, no human breath, no stumble, no imperfection. But to everyone else, it sounded real enough. Around 9 p.m., Emily called me to check in, her voice dripped with pity. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I told Tom we shouldn't go public, but the police insisted. You know how social media twists things." "Emily," I said quietly, "you work in social media." A pause. Just a second too long, then that breathy fake laugh. "That's not fair." But I could hear typing in the background, rapid, practiced keystrokes, the kind that come from someone controlling a narrative online. Before hanging up, she dropped the final dagger. Maybe it's time you give us power of attorney, just until this is cleared. People need to see you're being responsible. Responsible for the crime she created. That night I barely slept. Every sound felt amplified. The fridge hum, the clock tick, the whisper of wind through the cracked window. And then, at 2:17 a.m., my old phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Don't delete anything. They used voice synthesis. MR. The initials hit me like lightning. Michael Reyes, one of my former students from 15 years ago. He'd gone on to work in cyberforensics at the state lab. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. I replied instantly, "How did you know?" He responded with a screenshot. Metadata pulled from a social post of the leaked video. Tiny, invisible details buried inside the file name. Emily.bensony.synthexmedia.com. Upload. 0302 Final Render V4 MP4I. Stared at that address until my eyes blurred. My daughter-in-law's work domain, her personal folder. And just like that, the narrative changed, at least in my heart. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the experiment. The next morning, Emily and Thomas showed up unannounced to help me pack. The cameras followed them again. Apparently, they'd decided to temporarily relocate me to a wellness facility for safety. Emily walked through my house like a realtor, touching furniture, opening cabinets, whispering to herself. Then she looked at me with a soft, almost condescending smile. "Mom, everyone's worried. Let's get you somewhere quiet while we sort this out." I didn't answer, I just looked past her. To the man on the porch holding another camera. This time, I smiled for it, because now I had a plan. That night, I opened my old desktop computer, the same one Emily mocked me for keeping. Its fan whirred like an old friend sighing awake. I searched my archived emails, the ones she didn't know existed, and found the thread where she'd once asked me to send a video message for her family montage app test. Back then, I thought she was just experimenting with her new job. She'd told me to read a few sentences naturally so she could train a demo algorithm. I'd done it, smiling, saying whatever she asked. Now I realized she had my voice print, my every syllable, my every inflection. She had built the weapon she'd later use against me. The next morning, I drafted an email with a single subject line: urgent, proof of deepfake fabrication, need discretion. Recipient, Michael Reyes. State Cybercrime Division. Attachment, my last surviving email thread with Emily, time-stamped, with her exact request for the voice samples. And for the first time in 2 days, I exhaled, because the woman the world called a thief was about to become something far more dangerous: the proof. When you raise a child alone, you don't just raise him, you become his whole world. Every bruise, every success, every heartbreak passes through your hands. For 37 years, Thomas was that world to me. But the moment he married Emily, I started feeling like a guest in my own life. She was everything I wasn't: young, sharp, magnetic. Where I saw sincerity, she saw opportunity. She called me mom in public. But Clara, when no one else was around, said it with that clipped politeness that sounds like respect until you listen closer. At first, I blamed myself. She was ambitious. I was cautious. She chased trends. I collected memories. Maybe that's what happens when generations collide: friction, misunderstanding, ego. But later, I realized it wasn't friction. It was strategy. Emily didn't marry my son. She acquired him. It began subtly. Little things that seemed harmless. She offered to help organize my finances after my husband's passing, said online banking would simplify things. Then came the account merging, the shared access, the just sign here, Mom. It's easier for tax purposes. Always with that same disarming smile. She took control like water through cracks, smooth, unnoticeable, and unstoppable. Thomas never questioned her. He'd always been trusting, the kind of man who assumed kindness in everyone. And to be fair, Emily knew how to perform kindness like a professional. But there were signs. One night, years before the scandal, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. Thomas's voice was low. Tense. You can't use my mother's account like that. It's not your money, she snapped back. Loud enough for me to hear from the hall. Everything she has is because of us. You think she'd even keep the house if we didn't pay her bills? It wasn't true, of course. I had savings, modest but enough to manage. Still, Thomas didn't defend me after that night. He went silent, and silence, I've learned, is love's slowest death. The deeper she infiltrated, the more control she gained. When my health started to waver, arthritis, vertigo, small things that come with time, Emily weaponized them. She started forgetting to relay messages from my doctor, missed payments, late forms, then small rumors. Clara's memory isn't what it used to be. She got confused at the pharmacy last week. It spread through the family like smoke. By the time I realized, I was already the unreliable narrator in my own story. After the bank scandal broke, the humiliation wasn't just public, it was intimate. My sister stopped answering my calls. My church circle postponed our weekly brunch indefinitely. Even the cashier at the grocery store, a boy I'd known since he was 12, started handing me receipts slower, like he was afraid I'd pocket change that wasn't mine. Emily orchestrated everything perfectly. She framed me, not just in video, but in perception. The footage was only the weapon. Her real crime was narrative. On the third day after the arrest, I noticed something strange. 2 men parked across the street in a silver sedan. Tinted windows, no plates. They stayed there for hours, pretending to scroll on their phones. When I went outside to collect the mail, one of them lifted a camera. The flash caught the edge of my glasses. A staged moment, meant to circulate online again. Later that night, a headline appeared on a local gossip site, accused grandma caught spying on neighbors after fraud investigation. They used that photo. Same lighting, same angle. The campaign wasn't about truth anymore. It was about erasure. Erase my credibility. And any evidence I found would sound like delusion. But Emily didn't understand that I'd lived through worse storms. Poverty, war, grief. And once you've buried the love of your life, no rumor can bury you again. So I started quietly fighting back. The email from Michael Reyes came through around midnight the following day. He confirmed my suspicion. The video contained deepfake markers, synthetic eye refractions, duplicated reflection layers, and unnatural sound compression. But he warned me too. Mrs. Benson, whoever made this didn't just fake it. They covered it professionally. Someone used enterprise-level AI software, likely access limited. You're dealing with someone skilled. I didn't need to guess who. Emily worked for a company that marketed AI-generated promotional content. Their tagline was synthetic stories, real impact. A slogan that now sounded like a confession. Michael told me he could only help unofficially at first. He sent instructions: don't touch your devices. Don't log into anything. Let them think you're panicking. I'll extract the metadata myself. So I played my role. I let Emily believe I was spiraling. I answered her calls sounding confused. I forgot small details on purpose. When she visited, I left sticky notes everywhere. Random reminders, half-finished grocery lists, misplaced objects, enough to reinforce her illusion. It worked. She grew bolder. She began slipping up. One afternoon, she stopped by with what she called a peace offering, a framed photo of us at Thomas's wedding. She placed it carefully on my mantel and said softly, "Family is everything, Mom." Then she smiled, stepped back, and left. When I looked closer, I saw a tiny black dot near the corner of the frame, smaller than a pinhead, a camera, hidden inside the picture of her own wedding day. I unscrewed the back with a kitchen knife. Sure enough, a micro SD card glinted under the light. Someone had been recording me again, perhaps hoping to catch a confession. I didn't remove it. I left it exactly where it was. If she wanted footage, I'd give her footage. That evening, I sat on my couch and spoke loudly into the empty room. I must have done it. Maybe I just don't remember. I'm old, I said it twice, letting my voice tremble. Just enough to sound believable. If she was watching, she'd think she'd finally broken me. But the next morning, I recorded something else, on my own camera this time, my voice calm, steady. If anyone finds this, know that I am of sound mind, and know that what's happening to me isn't madness, it's manipulation. I saved it in 3 drives, uploaded it to cloud storage, and titled it Journal Truth 1. Then I called Michael. His voice came through. Tired but determined. I've isolated her device fingerprint, he said. I can prove she authored the file, but we'll need access to one of her personal devices for a full trace. I looked at the photo frame again, the one she left behind, and I smiled. She already gave it to me, I said. That was the first time in weeks I felt like myself again. Not a victim, not a confused old woman, but the woman who once built a life from nothing. I knew it wasn't over. Emily still had the public on her side, still had my son believing her. But truth has a patience that lies never do, and mine had just started recording. The week that followed felt like a slow-motion collapse. Every institution I had trusted began to treat me like a criminal, politely disguised as a grandmother. On Monday morning, a courier handed me an envelope stamped State of Illinois versus Clara Benson. Inside, notice of pending charges, fraud, identity theft, falsification of records. Trial date, 6 weeks. Attached was a glossy USB drive labeled Evidence A, Bank Security Feed, the same footage. The same voice, the same lie polished to legal perfection. Thomas came over that evening, pale and agitated. He wouldn't sit. He just paced, hands buried in his hair. Mom, just tell me the truth, he said. I can't. Defend you if you keep denying it. I studied his face, the boy who once brought me mother's day drawings, and now looked at me like a stranger across a courtroom. Tom, I said quietly. You're standing up for a recording, not for your mother. He exhaled sharply. Emily has proof, Mom. The metadata shows your phone near the bank. I almost smiled. Of course it did. She had my phone that day, borrowed it to fix my calendar sync. He left without saying goodbye. Emily waited outside in the car, sunglasses hiding her eyes but not her smirk. Within 48 hours, a true crime blogger uploaded a video titled Grandma Gone Greedy. 2 million views, clips of the fake footage mixed with stock music and captions like, When Love of Money Destroys Family. Old students, church friends, even my hairdresser sent awkward texts. Hoping this isn't true, no one asked how I was. Only whether the rumor was as bad as it looks. I deleted my social media accounts. The comments were poison, but Emily thrived in it. She started posting inspirational quotes about betrayal and forgiveness with pastel backgrounds and soft fonts. Her followers praised her grace in hardship, grace built on my ruin. Meanwhile, Michael worked from the shadows. We used burner phones and encrypted email. He warned me never to speak near any device that Emily might have touched. She could be running keyword alerts, he said. Your own words could trigger filters. He analyzed the metadata of Evidence A. What he found was subtle but damning. Identical color grading templates used in Emily's marketing videos. Audio rendered at 48 kHz stereo, a studio preset, not a CCTV default. And one frame tagged Synthex render engine v3.5 in hidden EXIF data. It was enough to raise doubt, not enough to win in court. We needed the source project file, the Deepfakes original composite. Without it, Emily could claim coincidence or glitch. 3 days before my preliminary hearing, I received a letter from the bank, foreclosure notice. Emily had frozen my savings and redirected my mortgage auto payments. Missed 2 months, they said. Neighbors watched as movers carried out furniture I'd owned for decades. One whispered, "Sad ending for a thief." I pretended not to hear, but inside, I made a decision. If they wanted a spectacle, I would give them one, on record. That night, I walked into the police station with a tray of cookies and a smile. I'm here to turn myself in, I said. The officers looked confused. "Ma'am, you're out on bail." "I know," I replied. "I just thought it'd be easier if you filmed me walking in." "Everyone else seems to." They didn't laugh, but the irony made the evening news. Public sympathy flickered for the first time. "Who bakes cookies for the cops accusing her?" Michael called the next day. "Got something," he said. He'd traced an upload to Synthex Media's internal server, a test render, created at 2:11 a.m. the night before the footage surfaced. User login. Ibbenson, he could subpoena it, but only through a court order, and only if I pleaded not guilty. "That means a public trial, Clara," he warned. "They'll dig into everything, your finances, your health, your past." "I've already lost my reputation," I said. "Might as well earn it back." The courtroom smelled of coffee and tension. Emily sat behind the prosecution. Wearing beige and sorrow, Thomas sat beside her, fingers locked around hers like a promise he didn't understand. The prosecutor played the video. My likeness filled the screen. Calm, calculated, criminal. Whispers rippled through the gallery. "Mrs. Benson," the lawyer said, "is this you?" I looked straight into the camera lens. It's her, pretending to be me. Laughter murmured across the seats, an old woman claiming clones and conspiracies. Then Michael stepped forward with his preliminary report. He spoke softly, but clearly, explaining how neural rendering engines leave digital fingerprints. He pointed to the frame-by-frame anomalies, the six-finger distortion I'd noticed weeks earlier. The judge frowned. "Are you suggesting the evidence was fabricated?" "Yes, Your Honor," Michael said. "By someone with access to Synthex Media's proprietary AI suite." Emily's jaw tightened. The prosecutor objected. He called it science fiction. The judge ordered a recess for independent verification. During recess, a journalist cornered me outside. "Mrs. Benson, do you feel betrayed by your family?" I could have said 100 things. Instead, I answered, "I feel like truth is taking the scenic route." That quote went viral. Memes of my face with captions like "scenic route to prison" spread. Overnight, even my defense fund page filled with jokes instead of donations. Michael told me to ignore it, but I felt the cracks widening. Doubt, even mine, has a way of whispering louder in the dark. Some nights I replayed the footage, wondering if maybe I had somehow been there. Memory falters. Technology doesn't, right? But then I'd remember the smell of lemon polish, the warmth of my house that Friday morning, and I'd know. Reality might bend, but conscience doesn't. A week before the next hearing, new evidence appeared online, a voice recording of me allegedly confessing on a phone call. Same calm tone, same phrases I used in daily life. But Michael noticed a mismatch. Breathing intervals perfectly identical every 6 seconds. Like a metronome, AI generated again. He filed a motion to suppress it. The prosecution accused him of tampering. Suddenly, my only ally was under investigation, too. It was chaos, and Emily thrived in chaos. She began visiting me out of pity, bringing food and pitying smiles, leaving behind sympathy cards, and once a USB drive labeled "Photos for the lawyer." Michael tested it. Inside, malware designed to wipe our case files. Her kindness was a virus in disguise. Then fate blinked. A disgruntled intern at Synthex leaked company logs online, complaining about unpaid overtime. Among them, entries showing Emily's user ID generating training data sets using family likenesses, thousands of image frames. My name included. Michael acted fast, archiving copies before deletion. He presented them to the court as corroborating evidence of fabrication origin. The judge allowed a forensic audit of Synthex servers. For the first time, Emily looked afraid. Her social media grace posts stopped overnight, but victory didn't taste like hope yet. Thomas still refused to believe. "You planted that intern," he said. "Emily would never—" "Thomas," I interrupted gently, "do you remember when you were little and broke the neighbor's window?" He blinked. "What does that have to do with—" "I paid for it, remember? Told them it was me, so you wouldn't get in trouble. That's what love looks like. Now tell me, if she truly loved you, Would she let your mother rot in prison for something she built? He had no answer, just silence. But that silence felt different, less blind, more wounded. The audit took 3 weeks. In that time, Emily tried one last desperate move. She staged a break-in at her own office, claiming hackers stole sensitive AI models. The security cameras, ironically, caught her entering alone after hours. When police confronted her, she blamed stress and medication. But the footage, real this time, was undeniable. That's when Thomas finally visited me, not with anger, but with trembling hands holding a drive. She left this on my desk, he said to destroy it. Michael analyzed it overnight. It was the project file, the original Deepfake composite. Timeline markers intact, voice layers labeled Clara Voice V2, the smoking gun. At the final hearing, the courtroom was packed. The judge reviewed the forensic findings in silence. Emily sat motionless as Michael projected the composite timeline. Every falsified frame, every synthetic voice splice. Then he played the real security footage from the bank, time-stamped the same day, showing a completely different customer at the counter, and me walking past the camera outside the pharmacy 2 miles away at the same moment. Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor withdrew. Emily's face crumbled, the mask finally slipping. You whispered something to Thomas, but he pulled his hand away. The judge dismissed all charges against me and referred Emily to federal investigators for digital forgery crimes. When the gavel struck, the sound echoed like thunder through 4 months of silence. Outside, microphones swarmed again. Mrs. Benson, any comment? I looked straight into the lenses that had once crucified me. Deepfakes can copy your face, I said, but they can't clone your truth. That quote went viral too, but this time, it wasn't mockery. People shared it as warning, as empowerment. The internet that destroyed me now carried my vindication. Yet in private, victory felt heavy. Thomas moved out, filed for divorce. Emily vanished into legal limbo. The house was quiet again, too quiet. Michael visited one evening, handed me a printed report and smiled. You're officially cleared. And for the record, your case just changed state cyber law precedent. I thanked him. He hesitated, then asked, What will you do now? I looked at the old desktop glowing in the corner. I think I'll start teaching again, I said. Maybe this time about truth. He laughed softly. Online class? Maybe, I replied. But no cameras, just voices. I've had enough faces for one lifetime. Freedom felt quieter than I expected. No applause, no parade, just the soft click of my front door when I came home that night. The house still smelled of lemon polish and dust, exactly as it had the morning the police first stormed in. Same furniture, same curtains, yet everything felt rearranged inside me. I was free, but the damage had its own heartbeat. Neighbors avoided my eyes in the supermarket. Some whispered apologies. Most just pretended not to see me. A vindication headline couldn't scrub months of gossip. And Thomas. He hadn't spoken since the verdict. He'd moved into a rental across town, telling friends he needed time. That was his pattern. When faced with guilt, he'd disappear into silence. 3 days after the trial, a certified envelope arrived. Return address, Synthex Media, Legal Division. Inside, a formal apology, a non-disclosure clause, and a check, $250,000. They called it a settlement for reputational harm. I called it hush money. At the bottom, in smaller print, one line stood out. Recipient agrees not to pursue further action against Synthex Media or its affiliates. Affiliates. That single word meant there were more Emilys, people using the same tools, perhaps for bigger lies. Michael stopped by that evening. When he saw the letter, he frowned. They're scared, he said. If this goes federal, they lose millions in contracts. So they're buying my silence, I replied. He nodded slowly. What will you do? I stared at the check. It shimmered like temptation, the promise of comfort after chaos. But then I remembered Emily's smile the day she placed that hidden camera in my home. Money, to her, was never about wealth. It was about control. "I'll keep the letter," I said. As evidence, Michael had been digging deeper, even after the trial. He discovered something buried in the Synthex server logs, a string of data labeled Project Motherboard, a test initiative involving behavioral training using senior likeness, data, hundreds of digital profiles built from social media, photos of elderly users, synthetic faces and voices designed to test deepfake realism. Mine was one of them, but far from the only one. They built an archive of grandparents, Michael said, disgusted. People who'd never even know their identities were copied. It hit me like a second betrayal, not personal, but generational. If they could turn me into a criminal with a few clicks, what stopped them from turning anyone into anything? That night, I opened my old computer again. For the first time, I didn't feel fear touching a keyboard. I felt purpose. I requested an appointment with Synthex's CEO, under the pretense of closing the settlement. They welcomed me eagerly, publicly forgiving the company made for good press. The office tower was all glass and light, the kind of sterile beauty that hides corruption under reflection. When I entered the boardroom, 5 executives greeted me with smiles too polished to be human. "Mrs. Benson, we're so relieved you found peace," one of them said. "Peace," I repeated, rolling the word like a foreign coin. Funny word. Sounds like quiet, but sometimes it's just silence under threat. I handed them the letter. "I'm not signing, but I am recording." Their smiles cracked. One reached to call security, but I continued calmly. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for responsibility. You will delete every dataset under Project Motherboard permanently," they protested, citing legal jargon and NDAs, so I pulled out a small device Michael had given me, a portable scanner loaded with evidence tags. "If you don't," I said, "this file goes to every journalist who covered my arrest. You'll never sell another synthetic campaign again." Silence. Then, a slow exhale from the CEO. "We'll review compliance options," she said tightly. "That's business language for yes," I replied, standing. "I taught English long before your algorithms learned to fake it." That night, I found Thomas sitting on my porch steps. He looked smaller than I remembered. Like guilt had shrunk him. "I saw the news," he said quietly. Emily confessed in interrogation. I waited. Apologies mean nothing until they hurt to speak. "She said she just wanted us to have security," he continued. "She said you'd never share," his voice broke. I believed her. I sat beside him. "Believing someone isn't wrong," I said. "But refusing to see the truth once it's shown, that's the sin." He nodded, eyes wet. "I can't fix what I did, Mom." "No," I said softly. "But you can decide who you become next." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Inside lay my wedding ring, the one I'd pawned years ago to pay his tuition. "Found it in her jewelry drawer," he whispered. She was going to melt it. For the first time in months, tears came freely, not of pain, but release. A week later, Michael called again. "There's something you should see," he said. Before Synthex wiped their servers, we captured fragments of Emily's project folder. He sent a screenshot. Within the code comments, one line was written in plain English. "Training dataset, Clara, Benson, final. Adjust voice modulation to show empathy." Empathy, the same emotion she'd stripped from every action in real life. "Do you want this made public?" Michael asked. I hesitated. Part of me wanted her name cleared from history so she couldn't hurt anyone again. But another part wanted people to see how technology without conscience could poison truth itself. "Release it," I said finally, not as revenge, as warning. Within days, the story exploded. Headlines read, "Grandmother's deepfake case exposes corporate AI abuse. Lawmakers cited my trial in proposals for new digital identity laws." Journalists called me a whistleblower, but I didn't feel heroic, just tired. Letters began, arriving handwritten ones from strangers across the world. Older women who'd been scammed, framed, or silenced wrote things like, "You made us believe age isn't weakness." Each envelope felt like a heartbeat. reminding me that the story wasn't just mine anymore. One evening, Thomas joined me for dinner. He set the table the way his father used to. 2 plates, folded napkins, candle in the center. For a long time, we ate in silence. Finally, he said, "Do you forgive me?" I looked at him, truly looked. The wrinkles near his eyes, the boy still hidden beneath the man. "I already did," I said. "But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering differently." He nodded, tears glinting in the candlelight. "I'm starting therapy," he said, "trying to learn why I need people like her to tell me who I am." "That's a good start," I replied. Knowing the lie is half the truth. Weeks later, a university invited me to speak at a cybersecurity seminar. I stood before a room of students younger than my grandchildren, all eyes fixed on the woman who'd been both victim and lesson. I was deepfaked before I even knew what the word meant. I told them, "You'll build the next generation of machines that mimic us. Just remember, replication isn't understanding, and imitation isn't love." They applauded, but I didn't smile. I simply looked at the recording light blinking on a nearby camera and said, "Make sure that thing tells the truth this time." Back home, I opened my computer one last time. On the desktop, a single file glowed. Truth. Project.zip. Inside were Michael's findings, the server logs, Emily's code. I uploaded them to a public archive under an anonymous name, the Scenic Root Files. Because truth, I've learned, doesn't need to shout. It just needs to exist where lies can't reach. As the upload bar filled, I whispered to myself, "You tried to erase me with pixels, Emily, but you forgot. Pixels can burn too." The progress bar hit 100%. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, soft, distant, inevitable. And somewhere inside that storm, I felt peace, not silence, not surrender. Real peace, the kind you earn when the truth finally stops running. The file had been online less than 12 hours when the storm began. By morning, the Scenic Root Files were everywhere, mirrored on tech forums, downloaded by journalists, dissected by cyber law students. Synthex Media's servers crashed under the weight of subpoenas and shame. News anchors used my name again, but this time the tone was different, respectful, careful, almost reverent. The grandmother whose deepfake trial changed everything. They said the word grandmother as if it suddenly meant truth-teller. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt the quiet before another explosion. That evening, my phone rang. An unlisted number, a woman's voice, low and deliberate. "Mrs. Benson, this is Agent Carter with the Federal Digital Crimes Unit. We need to speak with you, tonight." 2 agents arrived an hour later, suits crisp, eyes alert. They told me Emily had fled custody that afternoon. She'd skipped bail, stolen a company laptop, and disappeared. "She's scared," Agent Carter said. "But she's also cornered. We think she might try to reach you." "Why me?" I asked. "Because you're the one person who still sees her as human." I almost laughed. I'm not sure that's true anymore. At 2 a.m., headlights swept across my living room wall. I didn't move, just waited. The knock came soft, almost polite. When I opened the door, there she was, soaked from the rain, eyes wild, clutching the stolen laptop like a newborn. "Please, Clara," she whispered, "don't call them. I just need to explain." Behind her, thunder cracked like a warning. I should have slammed the door, but curiosity is a stubborn mercy. I stepped aside. Emily paced the living room, dripping onto the floor. "They wanted realism," she said. "Our clients, politicians, corporations, they wanted videos that could reshape narratives. You were supposed to be a demo, just internal testing." Her voice shook. "When the prototype worked too well, they realized it could protect clients, erase scandals, fake endorsements. I tried to stop them, but they offered Thomas a job if I cooperated." My heart clenched. "You used me for career leverage?" She met my eyes for the first time. "I thought if I controlled it, I could keep you safe. But when the files leaked, they blamed me. They're hunting me now, not the company." Lightning flashed. Her face looked almost translucent, like the ghost of the woman she pretended to be. Help me, she begged. Give me the original recordings. I can prove Synthex ordered it. I stared at her. You built the weapon, and now you want me to reload it for you? I just want to survive. I kept my voice calm. All right, the drives are in the study. Let me fetch them. She sighed, relief flooding her shoulders. While she waited, I reached behind the bookshelf, not for the drives, but for the small transmitter Michael had given me. One button, a silent beacon straight to the digital crimes unit. I returned with a blank hard drive. Everything's on here, I said, placing it on the table. But you'll have to plug it in. She hesitated. Why aren't you afraid of me? Because, I said softly, you've already done the worst you can do. She connected the drive. A pop-up window blinked. Syncing evidence archive. Her expression shifted. First confusion, then horror, as the laptop screen filled with mirrored data and the phrase, Federal Trace Active. From outside came the whine of tires, then red-blue lights slicing through the curtains. Emily backed away, whispering, You trapped me. No, I said. You trapped yourself years ago when you forgot truth has a memory. Agents burst through the door. Commands sharp, efficient? Emily froze, tears finally real. As they led her out, she looked over her shoulder. I was never good enough for your son, she said. I didn't answer. Some apologies don't deserve replies. The following week, the Department of Justice announced criminal charges against Synthex executives for data exploitation and synthetic media fraud. Emily cooperated, her testimony unraveling an industry built on deception. Thomas sat through every hearing, hollow but sober, watching the woman he once loved dismantle the empire she helped create. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, the judge cited my case as proof that humanity must remain the checksum of technology. It sounded poetic, but I only heard exhaustion. A month later, a network invited me to speak live, the woman who exposed digital deceit. I almost refused, but Michael insisted. You should own your story before someone else tells it again. So I sat beneath bright studio lights, the camera red dot staring like an unblinking eye. The host asked, Mrs. Benson, after everything, do you still believe in technology? I thought of my husband's analog camera, the one that captured memories without filters. I thought of my grandson, learning to code with innocence instead of greed. I believe in people, I said. Technology just tells us what kind of people we've become. Silence followed, a rare silence on television, the kind that breathes truth. When the segment ended, the producer leaned in. You just broke the internet again, he whispered. That night, I walked the same porch where my humiliation began. The sky was clear, stars scattered like 1,000 unwritten lines of code. Thomas joined me quietly. Hands in pockets. They sentenced her, he said. 10 years. She's already agreed to therapy programs inside, I nodded. Good. Maybe she'll learn to build something honest. He hesitated. Do you hate her? I looked out toward the dark horizon. No, hatred's just another form of captivity. I've been framed once. I won't live framed by anger too, he smiled faintly. You sound like Dad. That's the best compliment I've had in years, I said. We sat together, letting the night fill the spaces words couldn't. Later, I opened my computer one final time. An email notification blinked. Incoming message, unknown sender. Subject, you taught me empathy. Body, no signature. No attachments. Just one sentence. I'm starting over, using my skills to help victims prove their truth. I closed the laptop slowly. Whether it was really Emily or someone pretending, it didn't matter. The ripple had begun. I turned off the lights, letting the glow of the monitor fade. The reflection in the dark glass was still mine, wrinkled, imperfect, alive. No algorithm could replicate that. Before heading to bed, I whispered into the quiet house. They recorded me once to destroy me. Now the whole world's recording itself to remember what truth sounds like. And for the first time in a long while, the silence felt safe. I used to think peace was silence. Now I know it's simply the moment when truth no longer needs defending. The months after Emily's sentencing unfolded slowly, like a long exhale after holding your breath for too long. My name was cleared, my finances restored. But reputation doesn't return by court order. It creeps back one human interaction at a time. Neighbors started waving again. Mrs. Lang brought me apple pie and apologized for believing the news. Even the mailman, who once refused to hand me letters directly, began leaving little notes that said, "Glad to see you smiling again." Forgiveness, I realized, isn't a gift you give others. It's the key that unlocks your own cage. Every morning, I water my violets again. They survived everything: police searches, court hearings, neglect, and still bloom like nothing ever happened. Maybe that's what survival really is, not forgetting the storm, just learning to flower through it. Thomas visits twice a week now. He brings groceries, sometimes his daughter, and an awkward kindness that reminds me of his younger self. We don't talk about Emily much. Some ghosts lose power when you stop saying their names. He once asked, "Do you ever miss her, Mom?" I thought about it. Then I said, "No, but I mourn the person she could have been." He understood. 2 months later, I received a letter stamped with the correctional facility's insignia. It was from Emily. "Clara, you were right. I built lies until I couldn't tell them from reality. I'm taking courses here, teaching inmates how to spot digital scams. They call me the Deepfake lady. You don't have to forgive me, but please, don't forget me either, because forgetting is how people like me get made." I read it twice, then tucked it between the pages of my husband's Bible, not out of reverence, but remembrance. Not all redemption happens outside a cell. Weeks later, a local college invited me to speak at their ethics seminar. I almost said no, but then I thought about all the students designing the next wave of machines, some dreaming of progress, some dreaming of profit. I stood at the podium and looked out over their bright, expectant faces. Most were young enough to be my grandchildren. "I used to be afraid of technology," I began. "I thought it was stealing what made us human, our faces, our voices, our truth, but I was wrong. Technology doesn't steal humanity. People do when they stop valuing it." The room was silent. Not out of boredom, but understanding. I ended with a question. When the world can fake anything, what will make you real? The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was thoughtful. And in that quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt since before all this began. Purpose. Sometimes I replay that first morning in my head, the officers on my porch, the tablet glowing with a lie. If I could speak to that version of myself, I'd tell her, "Don't fear what they take from you. Fear what you give away to defend it, because truth, I've learned, doesn't need volume. It just needs endurance. It survives screenshots, gossip, algorithms, and eventually even fear." If you're listening to this story, remember, anyone can be framed in a world built on illusions. Your face, your voice, your name, they can all be borrowed. But your integrity, the quiet core that chooses right when no one's watching, that's untouchable. So guard it. And if the world ever tries to rewrite your story, don't scream over the noise. Just stand still. Let time do the shouting for you, because truth always finds its own volume. Sometimes, truth isn't loud. It doesn't shout to be heard or fight to be believed. It waits, quietly, until every lie runs out of breath. Clara didn't win because she had power. She won because she had patience. And maybe that's the lesson we forget in this new world, where anyone can fake a face, a voice, or even a story. What can't be faked is character. So if you've ever been misunderstood, betrayed, or made to feel small, remember her. Remember that silence, when guided by integrity, can be louder than 1,000 accusations, and maybe ask yourself, if the world could deep fake your story, would it still look like truth? Pause for 2 seconds, soft breath sound. If you felt something while watching this, tell us in the comments. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? How did you find your truth again? Music swells slightly, then fades to warm outro. And if you believe stories like this should be told, subscribe to Her Side of the Story, where every story reminds us that wisdom doesn't fade with age. It just learns to speak softly and let time do the shouting.